Jaosn was deflowered by his master, who made him drunk and took advantage of him. Jaosn received news that his parents had passed away before the incident. Mr. Smith was by his side, holding him as he cried. For the first time, Jaosn saw a glimmer of kindness in Mr. Smith's eyes. Jaosn was sent to serve the wealthy businessman, Mr. Smith, who was aggressive. Jaosn was accused of causing Timi's death. Jaosn nursed her back to health, but despite his best efforts, she passed away. Mr. Smith was devastated, but his wife seemed too distracted by her work, caring less for her children. She arrived home some days after her daughter's death. Mr. Smith was depressed, which nearly took his life. The doctor warned him on the danger of not letting go, that this might result in him having a stroke. Mr. Smith lived for his remaining child. Flashbacks. As Jaosn entered Mr. Smith's mansion, he was greeted by the eerie silence of the mansion. Mr. Smith's wife, a nurse, was nowhere to be found, and the children seemed to be the only ones who acknowledged his presence. Timi, the young daughter, gazed up at him with curious eyes, while her brother seemed oblivious to the new servant. Little did Jaosn know, his life was about to become entwined with theirs in ways he never imagined. Mr. Smith tried to strangle Jaosn. He wounded him, blood dropping, becoming sore. Mr. Smith's demeanor remained as cold as ice, his hatred for Jaosn palpable. Jaosn couldn't help but wonder what he had done to deserve such treatment from Mr. Smith. Still, Jaosn was there for everyone. Mr. Smith's grief began to thaw after the death of his daughter, replaced by a growing dependence on Jaosn. He found himself looking forward to the servant's presence, feeling an unsettling sense of emptiness when Jaosn was away. One fateful day, Jaosn suffered an injury while attending to his duties. Mr. Smith's reaction was unexpected. He felt a pang of concern, a sense of responsibility he couldn't shake off. As he nursed Jaosn back to health, their eyes met, and for a fleeting moment, something sparked between them. It was a moment that would change the course of their lives forever. When Jaosn received the news of his only surviving parent's death, Mr. Smith couldn't hide it but showed care for him. As Jaosn couldn't sleep, Mr. Smith spiked his drink with alcohol and some drugs so that he could be able to sleep. As the both drank, Mr. Smith, acting abnormal without his senses, did it with Jaosn. When Jaosn woke up, he was devastated and disappointed. He cried and left his house of Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, feeling bossy, couldn't bend low to ask for his forgiveness. Mr. Smith had a heart attack and was left alone in the hospital without his wife. Mr. Smith asked the doctor to call Jaosn for him, as he needed someone to care for him and his only surviving child. If you want to share your true life story, please text me on WhatsApp, +2349135530547. Mr. Brother had a kidney failure, which is very common toady, and has few days to live. There must be a kidney transplant immediately, if not he would die, the doctor told Jaosn. I have some days to live. I love you, Jaosn. I think the feeling is true. Please forgive me for all that I have done to you, Mr. Smith said. Jaosn was surprised as how Mr. Smith apologized to him. Mr. Smith kisses Jaosn as Jaosn was consoling him. I think I should donate my kidney to you, Jaosn said. Mr. Smith angrily rejected it. Jaosn had been poisoned, and his life hung in the balance. Mr. Smith's health began to decline, his depression deepening as he received the news. He wondered who would have poisoned Jaosn. Flashback. Mr. Smith's wife returned and she was not pleased with what she saw. She pretended that nothing was wrong, but Jaosn could see the anger in her eyes. One day, she gave Jaosn a glass of juice, which was poisoned. Jaosn began to bleed and vomit blood, and Mr. Smith was devastated. You will die if you give out your remaining kidney, because the other is weak and might not make it, doctor advising Jaosn. The doctor told them that Jaosn had transplanted his kidney to Mr. Smith, even after Mr. Smith had refused. Jaosn's kidney had been affected by the poison, but he had still given it to Mr. Smith to save his life. Mr. Smith's wife was filled with regret, but it was too late. She had destroyed the one person who had brought happiness into their lives. She left the city as police were after her. As Jaosn lay in the hospital, his body weak and battered, Mr. Smith held his hand, his eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Jaosn, he whispered. I never meant for this to happen. Jaosn smiled weakly, his heart filled with love for the man who had changed his life forever. I love you, Mr. Smith, he whispered. Mr. Smith's eyes widened in shock, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned in closer, his lips brushing against Jaosn's. Their love was forbidden, but they didn't care. They knew that they had found something special, something that was worth fighting for. As they kissed, the doctor looked on, a smile on his face. "You two are meant to be," he said. But their happiness was short-lived. The doctor told them that Jason had only 4 years to live, unless God decided otherwise. Mr. Smith was devastated, but he refused to give up. He promised to do everything in his power to make Jason happy, to give him the joy he deserved. As they left the hospital, Jason leaned on Mr. Smith's arm, his heart filled with love and gratitude. After he learned that the police has found Mrs. Smith, he withdrew all the charges against her. Smith traveled abroad with Jaosn and his child, promising to give the one that gave his kidney to him the joy that he needed. Please, this is a true life story folded ends. Please subscribe. The end.